Hey guys, part 3 of a 5-part series exploring the temperaments. We're talking sanguine today.
That's me.
All you fun people, all you fun sanguines, going to be learning a little bit about you.
And me.
But also the dark side. The vices, the virtues, the natural inclinations, all great stuff to get a greater understanding of where you are in your growth in holiness and where you can go from here.
So stick around.
See you in there.
Bye.
Welcome back.
Hey, guys.
We're here talking temperaments continued. This is part 3 of a 5-part series. We're helping people to learn a little bit more about their natural tendencies, or natural dispositions, through the lens of this personality test called the Temperaments. Today is Sanguine Day.
That's mine.
This is celebrating Erin, her primary temperament today.
Yes. So we've talked about in the past, if you guys haven't listened to the previous podcast, we recommend you go back and listen. We talked about what the temperaments are, a little bit about the history. We didn't know a lot about the history, sorry. But we kind of...
Boring.
History is so boring. But we
Talks about bile and phlegm and all this stuff.
It's
Original thoughts was like, it was like some of the history here. I think this is a little
gross,
interesting.
Actually.
So like they have 4 different temperaments, and it was they believed in the beginning. This is like hundreds of years old, you guys. All right, so like obviously not based on like some really modern stuff, but still has withstood the test of time. But it's like how much bile you have, yellow bile versus brown bile, or blood or phlegm. Those are the 4 fluids that they said based on somebody that was...
These physiological dispositions of the body. If somebody has more of this, they are this temperament.
So when you're sick, you're phlegmatic?
That's about right. I feel like not doing anything when I'm sick. So yes, that is correct.
But still grounded in, I like taking the wind and interrupting because I'm choleric and that's what I do. But still very much grounded in nature. Okay, so temperaments are grounded in nature. It's not just something that's nurture. Nurture can certainly shape the way these things are, but there's something grounded in our flesh, who we are, that is that's tied to our temperaments and our nature.
And we're basing all of this off of what St. Thomas Aquinas says: grace works upon nature, builds upon nature. And so for us to know our nature, our starting off point, we can actually effectively grow in grace. We can remove those obstacles to grace. We can grow in virtue. We could eliminate our vices. So this is what we're going to be talking about today in the sanguine temperament. So sanguines love parties. So get ready, put your party hats on, and enjoy.
Party hat is on. So we're going to be talking about the light side, the dark side of these temperaments, some common virtues and vices that are associated with them, to which they are naturally inclined. And then we're getting into just some kind of generic overview of how this temperament can show up. And we'll wrap up with some practical ways that you can start to refine and grow in virtue within this temperament, and even apply our journal as a resource to helping you grow in virtue and as a sanguine.
Yeah. And we're leading up to, actually, in the academy, we're doing a whole month on the temperaments. So we're going to be like coaching people in the temperaments, which the temperaments is a really cool personality test just to take and like learn about yourself. And we highly recommend you do that.
Learn about your spouse or your kids.
But we have our own tests that we're actually going to be creating and finishing and completing by the time we roll out this month, which is the month of July.
Yeah, actually, by the time you're listening to this, if we hit our mark, that test is available.
Yes.
And so you'll be able there's a free version of it, but there's also a larger, more robust report, which I certainly recommend. That will be a paid version of it.
And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because normally you take a personality test and you don't really have somebody to coach you through it. But this is what we aim to do that month. So check it out in the academy. Join for 1 month if that's something that you want to try out for a month. You will not regret it. If you get in there and start looking in those archives and start checking out those coaching calls, if you're anything like me, you won't regret it.
Okay,
so
if you're
let's
watching
get back into this.
Yes, and if you're watching on YouTube, want to remind everybody early here to like, subscribe, so you get notifications. Helps us climb the charts here as well and get in front of more people to teach this amazing stuff.
Yes.
Erin, go ahead.
into the sanguine temperament. So we always talk about the Winnie the Pooh characters because there's like very specific Winnie the Pooh characters that actually exemplify or demonstrate these qualities of each of the 4 temperaments. This is Tigger. Very bouncy, very all over the place.
Lots
kind
of fun.
You want him part of the party. You want him to be a party starter even. This is the sanguine temperament. Perfect way to exemplify what the sanguine temperament is and what it looks like.
Very extroverted.
Yes.
In the way that it shows up.
They are motivated by sense pleasure. So anything they can take in through their senses that is pleasurable, that is desirous, that is something that they love. Even just anything that brings them to a place of joy or delight. That is what they are motivated by. Shiny objects. A lot of people think ADD people, or a lot of people with sanguine may have ADD. With the sanguine temperament may have ADD. Well, that is my case anyway. So that's kind of a little bit of my own.
Share.
Yes, overshare.
Not really. It's okay.
Anyway, I know I've shared this before.
Oh, so many times.
Yeah. So a lot of the distinctions between the temperaments is their level of reaction to a stimulus and how long they react to it. So just kind of a brief overview. We've already covered this stuff, but we're going to bring it back. Basically, sanguines react very quickly and arouse very quickly, like it's big and it's quick. But over the time, the duration of the reaction goes away pretty quickly as well. So like as fast as it comes, it leaves. And even just bringing back the memory of whatever the stimulus is, whether it's upsetting or exciting, they kind of aren't as excited about it anymore. So like, it's that, what did we call it? It was like twigs in a fire. It's that quick.
Yeah. Like dry grass.
Dry grass in a fire.
Goes pretty quickly, but then, it's
Peters
nothing.
out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Quick, just as quickly as it came.
Yeah.
I love the word, being able to put the P words with this. What's the P word for this one? We have the powerful choleric.
Oh, this is the popular sanguine. So they're friends with a lot of people. They can make friends wherever they go. I mean, you guys might have kids who were sanguine. And I remember when I first was introduced to this temperaments quiz, I think I was like 10. And my mom came home from like a temperaments seminar and she said, "You are sanguine."
You're my sanguine kid.
Yeah. And she was like, "There's no doubt in my mind that you are sanguine." And they could just make friends with anyone. They could talk to anyone.
I love the story of Aaron's parents coming home from a parent-teacher conference. And the teacher was just like, "Aaron, she just sings in the middle of class. And then when I bring it up to her, she's not even aware that she's singing." And Aaron's parents brought it up to her and she's like, "No, I don't."
That's another perfect sanguine thing because when their defects are brought up or something that is like, they are so unaware of them. And so even if you bring up their defects, you don't really, as a sanguine, you don't really get offended by it. But you're also like, oh, if you do believe it, you're like, oh, that's kind of cute.
Whatever.
It's not a big deal.
Who cares?
It rolls off a little bit. Right. Why do you care so much? Or you're just not aware of it.
Sounds
at all.
like a you problem.
Yes. That would be my response to that. So what if I sing?
Yeah. So very.
Don't I have a wonderful voice?
Lovely, lovely. So they're very relationship-oriented people. They're also very verbose usually, so they got the gift of gab a lot of the time. They can talk.
Usually entertainers.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. They're the life of the party. Aaron, we joke about there was a point in your life where people used to invite Aaron to weddings to get the party started.
Well, I was hired to do that. I always say I was hired as a dancer, and then people go, "Huh?" And I'm like, as a party starter dancer.
Party starter dancer.
So I did bar mitzvahs, I did weddings, but it was I must have been at a party of a bunch of melancholics because nobody knew how to get up and dance. And I was like, "Yes, please. I will get paid to do that."
Yes.
I'm so happy to do that.
The Federicas over at Scythian, they call you the firecracker.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They did.
So there you go.
Former groupie, Scythian over here. Roadie.
Anyway, okay. So the light side of the sanguine, these are the good qualities. We kind of already touched on them, but docile. is willing to kind of follow whoever's going to take the lead. Will go with the flow, just as long as you have fun, optimistic. They like groups. They love to laugh. They love to be funny.
They're positive.
Very positive.
I think Clifton
Positive.
Strengths.
Positive.
They're positive. I think Clifton Strengths. Clifton Strengths.
Oh,
Clifton
God.
Strengths. I think adaptability. I think positivity. I think a lot of those relationship kind of themes,
Yes.
but even some of those influencer themes showing up
oh,
here
yeah, big
that
time.
can, like activator, let's get going, like let's get this party started.
But not finishing. That's totally a sanguine. So like,
Sure.
let's get other people to do the work. Like I will be here and be your cheerleader and excite you so you get going. But like, I'm not going to finish whatever.
I will fan those flames.
Yes, that's about it.
Yeah.
They're self-assured, eager, they're okay with talking in front of groups. They're enthusiastic, spontaneous. What was the other one? Loves variety. That's a big thing for me. Like, and I think it's a good quality, but it probably isn't always for people who work with me.
Taps me on the shoulder.
Yes.
Could be a little bit of whiplash that goes on there.
Yes.
But I think you've kind of grown in a lot of virtue with this. And that's the thing that we always like to highlight with these. These are not labels, these temperaments. They're a starting point. It's just a bit of an orientation to kind of a natural disposition. And we talk about a disposition of thinking, feeling, and acting, right? That distinguishes one temperament from another. But they're not the end point. We're called to kind of refine these temperaments so that only the light side is really coming forth, and we're operating in those. And then the dark side, kind of the vicious side of those things, is really getting reduced or eradicated through a life of virtue.
Yeah, and I do think there is a way to lean into your strengths so that you can actually start to remove those vices, that vicious side, that dark side.
So if you know that you're like a naturally positive person and you see somebody else that's like hurting, and there's like, step into that sanguine temperament, like to go and engage. Like the sanguine person, more so than the melancholic or the phlegmatic or even the choleric, will kind of see that opportunity to they're just naturally a people person. And so you can step into that light side a little bit more. And it's not that a choleric person can't comfort somebody else, or a phlegmatic can't, or a melancholic can't. It's just not quite as natural as it is for the sanguine. So there's something very empowering about starting to know these things.
Yes, 100%. Some of the dark side of the sanguine is they can be very superficial and very vain. Like kind of they're a social butterfly, but they fly around like on top of things. So like that depth isn't something that they're naturally drawn into. One thing that I would say, it's interesting because we have a lot of people who do our journal. We talk about our journal all the time. And I noticed this. There are people who are like, I cannot get past a certain point in the journal. And they're all sanguines. And I'm like, why? Because I'm a sanguine and I can do it. I created the journal, right? But I picked up that discipline. I started doing that back in college, almost 20 years ago. Started just writing my thoughts out on paper and just getting them out and practicing that level of depth of going deeper. Now, I probably will never hit that level of depth that a melancholic can hit just because of my sanguine temperament. I can't fully eradicate that because I don't like being there necessarily. But it's what I like is that release that I feel at the end of it. That, like I said, we're kind of motivated by something new, something exciting, and receiving that release is a drive for me, is a motivation.
And there's the positive driver for you. It's because when you are really mining the depths of your soul, you often encounter things, which is really what we're doing in the journal. You encounter things that aren't necessarily that beautiful all the time. You encounter your flaws or your dark side, kind of like we're talking about here. And that can often bring you to an emotion that you don't necessarily want to feel. It's not necessarily a pleasurable emotion. And if you're inclined towards pleasure, like the sanguine is, there could be a greater aversion to go to a place that could cause that emotion that you don't want. Whereas like a choleric, I can just be like, okay, like I'm driven more by my head than by my heart. Broad strokes here. So this is just part of the process. Whatever, I'll feel this emotion for a second, but like I want to come to knowledge of myself a little bit more, and that's motivating to me. Where here I hear you like leaning into even the strength of the sanguine, being like, okay, yeah, I want the pleasurable emotion, but like it's far more pleasurable to have this emotion on the other side of this kind of uncomfortable experience in the journaling.
And you know what? I think I'm also leaning on my secondary temperament, which is cleric. So reasonably, I'm like, I know I need to go through this in order to get to the other side. Like through my own logic, I've realized that this is mandatory. This is necessary. Yeah. Similar to like a workout, it's like I want to do a hard workout because I want to get on the other side. I want to get to this goal at the end of it. So I do think I'm leaning on that choleric side a little bit when it comes to the journal. Yeah. But so I'm really glad that I picked up that ability to journal at a young age. And this is why we're saying these things, because not all of these dark sides are ever present, in the sanguine. You may have grown in ways of discipline and temperance. Right. And so it might not apply to all. It's certainly not an extensive list, but it's not the only, it's not where you are all the time.
Right. So, and that's where that lack of depth, that kind of superficial label can show up with the sanguine, because if all you're doing is you're resting in kind of the comfortable emotions, the positive emotions, you're going to be inclined away from going to kind of any sort of places that may elicit something else. So like sanguines, I think, are actually, because they're so positive, they're also very good at picking up negativity.
Yes. Because they want to avoid it.
Because they want to avoid it. There's an aversion that they have.
I will say, as a coach, I really had to. That was probably one of the hardest things I learned, was to hold the space for negative emotion in my client and just allow it to be there for myself too. But to allow it to be there and to not try to cheer them up. Yeah. It's kind of like you just kind of let them be in it. And we just kind of work through it that way. But that's where that logic comes in, because I did this. I do this with myself first. And it's like, no, we're going to have to go through it to get to the other side. This is not something we slap a Band-Aid on. So, so they struggle with follow through. They love sensual pleasures. When I say sensual pleasures, I mean things of the senses like food, sex. A lot of sanguines struggle with the 6th and the 9th commandment, with lust. But a lot of like things that kind of give you that hit of dopamine, whatever that may be. Social media. They struggle with temperance. They are inconstant. That's a big one. They're kind of like, they'll always come up with a reason for why they've changed their mind. And it's always like a brilliant reason. This is ideation in the strengths world. But they're flaky. They have like, I'm thinking of from a sanguine standpoint, you have all, like, you're totally bought in. I'm going to show up here. I'm going to show up on time. I'm going to do it because I love you. And you believe that, but then you like flake out and you're like, oh, something else came out. Yeah.
Yes.
Restless. That's a big one. Think of Tigger. He's just always like bouncing around. But like there is a restlessness because you're so focused on the external world and what you're taking in through your senses, that and really you have an aversion of going deep. Like I said, you can pick up that discipline. Saint Teresa of Avila, who's a doctor of the church and a mystic, she could go deep, was a sanguine. She started as a sanguine. And so like moving into some of those places, those other qualities of some of the other temperaments, while leaning into your strengths, I think is the art of living out your temperaments in a holy way.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot, even with Clifton strengths, a lot of like influencer themes showing up here. I'm thinking communication, which is seeking, it's motivated to move somebody emotionally with their language. I'm thinking of woo, which is motivated to help somebody else feel happy and content. So another kind of emotional agenda there. I think of activator, that just wants to move people into some sort of action. Doesn't matter. They just have to constantly be doing something. And so, yes, there's a lot of energy, but that energy is directed outwards from themselves.
Yes, yes. Which is, they're extroverted. It's an extroverted temperament.
Yep.
There's an inclination to jealousy and envy because you see other people maybe having those things that you want, those sense pleasures that you want, and you're like, I want it too.
I want that.
I laughed out loud when I saw this one. Dread of growth in virtues or anything that could be strenuous. Yep. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yep.
And okay, so let's move to virtues and vices.
Yep.
Anything else you want to add to that?
Nope.
That you see?
It's a trap.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
some
falling
natural
for that
virtues and spiritual gifts that the sanguine temperament has is joy. That's a gift. It's a fruit of the Holy Spirit. But just that emotion of joy, they really live in that a lot. Mercy,
magnanimity.
Thank you.
You got it.
Magnanimity.
That's why I'm here.
Gratitude, docility. Just being very docile to the Holy Spirit. And docility is kind of like under obedience. It's kind of the similar thing.
Yeah, it's docile to people also in a very kind of malleable way. And this is where I think it can show up as superficial, because the person is the sanguine person is often very adaptable to the people that are around them. So they can kind of adjust their energy to the people around them to kind of, I don't necessarily understand them, but maybe to connect or to move them, whatever they're, adjust their energy a bit.
Just and to inspire too. I mean, they're sanguines are very creative people, and they want to inspire others. They want to affect others because they're so affected by their externals that they love that connection. Generosity, creativity, enthusiasm, obedience, charity. So those are the main natural virtues. Natural vices and spiritual weaknesses. We kind of already spoke on these, but vanity, they can be very vain. I thought it was really interesting as a hairstylist and a beautician. Most hairstylists and beauticians are sanguines. And you become good at doing hair and makeup because you do it on yourself mainly. There's like this old joke, don't go to a hairdresser who has awful hair, which is not really a joke. It's kind of like common sense. Don't do that. But I think there's like this there is this vanity. I'm not saying hairdressers are vain, but it's very hard to escape vanity when you're surrounded by mirrors. I remember like it was like one Lent, and I was like, what do I give up? And I'm like, maybe looking in the mirror so much.
I did that one year too.
Yeah. But I couldn't because it was my job. Like I had to actually look in the mirror for my clients. Anyway, so vanity, superficiality, inconsistency, pleasure seeking, unreliability. Yeah. Virtues that sanguines could pray for. Temperance. Oh, I did not like that. I've actually changed my mind about temperance.
Yeah, when you really like sense pleasures. You are likely drawn to excess.
I remember being so mad that Matt did Exodus 90 because I was like, I don't understand this. And I also didn't want the brunt of.
Well,
Exodus
she was like,
90.
this is going to impact me. Like, who am I going to drink with if you're not drinking alcohol? Who am I going to watch TV with if you're not watching TV?
And then I figured it out. I just did it by myself.
She was like, thanks for picking a Lenten sacrifice for both of us this year.
Yes. You do that, though. Every year. You know what I'm going to give up? Something that you're going to give up, too. Like, oh, no, thank you. So anyway.
It's because I love you.
They need to grow in temperance, abstinence, continence, modesty, chastity, patience. There's a lot. Perseverance, prudence. Yep. Pretty much the whole list. You can grow in them. Yes. Sanguine saints. Saint Philip Neri. Love him. Saint Teresa of Avila. St. Peter. I think St. Peter was choleric sanguine. He was kind of impetuous, and he checked the boxes in both of those.
But I love how, you highlighted on the last podcast, but you also have, St. Teresa of Avila, doctor of the church, sanguine. Arguably, it's just like, okay, well, the melancholics are the ones that are best, like they have the most natural disposition to the contemplative life.
Yeah.
Yet here we have somebody who really didn't have that, almost like the opposite. It's really a testament to how much virtue she grew in.
It's funny. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I'm like, I haven't looked this up, but looking into the doctors of the church, like the big guns, St. Teresa of Avila is one of them. She was a sanguine, turned into like a mystic, a saint, all of those things. St. Thomas Aquinas was a phlegmatic. And you say phlegmatics actually have the hardest time becoming saints, because nothing motivates them, right? Or it's very hard to motivate them. But I'm like, but in that overcoming your natural disposition, you do grow in more virtues and almost become somebody who needs to share their work with others, like the great saints. Right.
So where the phlegmatics oftentimes they lack motivation, and so where they can really grow is by growing in conviction. Certainly we know stories of St. Thomas Aquinas growing in conviction. There's the legendary story of his brothers trying to tempt him by putting the prostitute into the cell with him when he wanted to become a priest. And
Sheesh.
He chased her out with a hot coal on the end of a stick.
Long gone are those days.
Oh,
the
man.
Fun days.
The fun days of
chasing prostitutes around with
brothers,
oh
house arrest, and brothers tempting you with prostitutes.
Guys, if you like, all right.
Sounds fun.
This is a tangent, but can we just like start creating movies about the saints again? I'm like, these are like the most insane stories.
They're exciting, dramatic
Yes.
stories.
Okay.
You have to invent all
I
these
don't
things.
have enough
It'd be
money
boring.
or time or experience to create a Catholic production company, but I know somebody else does. We'll give money to it. We'll give our ideas to it, but like
maybe you.
Yes. So if you got that burning, get moving.
We don't have any money to give you that, though. So,
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe $5. Okay. So if you are a sanguine, you
I love this. Let's
are
start. You're motivated by fun.
yes.
All right. Your rewards are stimulation of your emotions. So you tend to be doing things that are going to have an emotional impact not only on you, but on your people around you. You want to change your environment emotionally.
I love coaching sanguines because I know them inside and out. And I know that if we make something fun or into a game, like it's less strenuous. Like we were saying before, it was like one of our dark-sided qualities. We do not like things strenuous, but games are sometimes challenging. So we can make things fun. And the thought work that we do here, it's like you can actually create fun with your mind. All you have to do is be more intentional about it.
Yeah, I love how your friend Maura, she knew she had some sanguine kids, and so when it was time to clean up the house,
Yes.
it was a game. Who could pick up the most toys? And all her little sanguines started running around and picking things
cholerics
up.
too.
And cholerics too.
They like
'cause
to
wanted
win,
be
though.
the
They might be
best.
like shoving people with their
Oh,
elbows.
I imagine in that household it could have gotten dropping some bows.
Yeah, yes. So you can make anything fun. It's good news for you because you are a sanguine and you have that ability to do that. And you can make anything joyous too. So like really kind of get inside your mind. Why is something boring to you? Why is it hard? And you can do some mindset work around that.
I remember when Aaron and I were teaching confirmation classes, I was just like, no, this is the way it's got to be done. Like, this is how you teach the class. And it would show up and it was just like dry like toast and got no responses. And then Aaron was just like, I think we need to have some icebreakers. And I was just like, no, those are so dumb. And she's like, but we're going to do them. And I was like, okay.
And they're going to work.
And it was always, I appreciate the question that you asked then, and you still ask now, how can we make this fun? How can we make this really enjoyable so that we're showing up as our best selves and like we're not falling into this academia kind of trap that it has to be boring or painstaking. or you just have to kind of white knuckle your way through learning.
And I'm sure there's like a neurological component too. When things are fun, you actually
Endorphins,
take
yes.
in more information. So it is actually logical to make things fun and memorable. So I think this is a fascinating one. I shared a story. I don't know if it was the first podcast in this series, but sanguines are not motivated by shame because they can be people pleasers. They might say, yes, I'll do that. And then they don't do it, but they're not motivated by shame from themselves or shame from somebody else. They will just not do it. And it's kind of this like passive aggression a little bit, like, don't tell me what to do in that sense. Even though they are obedient in nature, they just are not motivated by that. They're motivated by something light, something that they love to work to move themselves towards.
Yeah, it's going to help them to stay in, again, that positive emotion. And staying in positive emotions, that could be a very virtuous thing. I mean, like, it's as long as they're grounded in, it's not to an excess where it's just like, okay, I can't do anything that is, calling on some irascible appetite where I have to, it's an arduous good that I'm pursuing and I just avoid doing the hard work and kind of staying in a comfort zone. No, that's like the vicious side of it. But like positivity is a real gift.
Yeah. I think this sanguine motto, I think it was St. Catherine of Siena who said this, all the way to heaven is heaven because Jesus is the way.
This is the way.
And that is such a sanguine thing because it's such a positive way of thinking about this journey to heaven. Like I'm thinking of my sanguine temperament being like, does this have to be so hard and like so negative? Like it's just kind of, that's how my mind works. I do not get people who ruminate on negative things. I cannot understand them. And it's from a complete place of charity and humility. I just don't get it. I just think to myself, why would you waste all of your mental energy doing that? Like you could be having fun. That's such a sanguine thing to say, but okay.
Her sanguine butts up against my secondary melancholic quite a bit.
Yeah. So when you're in a melancholic phase, we have found, I just leave the room at that point because you also don't really want to be like cheered up at that moment. You just kind of want to like do your thing. And I leave and it frustrates me because I'm like, I don't know how to cheer you up. And nor do I think that's what you need.
Sometimes I'm leaning
right now.
on your positivity and kind of drawing from that a bit. And but sometimes it's just like, hey, this is just kind of what it is. And I want to invite you into this kind of negative understanding of what's going on. So
and I'm like, no,
we can
thank you.
solve this problem. It's kind of my restorative that shows up there as well. Where it's just like, this isn't a big deal. Like, yeah, it feels a little uncomfortable, but like,
come and get in this negative swamp.
it's another reason why I think when it comes to budgeting and things like that, it's just like,
yes,
you got it, Matt.
Yes. And you're so good at it because you have that melancholic.
Oh my gosh, I am.
You're so good.
It's so good until we have to buy an expensive bathing suit, which may or may not have happened 20 minutes ago.
It's going to be awesome, though. That
It's going to be great.
I mean, I have so much fun in it.
You better for the next 10 years. That body has got to stay this shape.
You got it.
We'll see.
Are you trying to motivate by shame? Because that doesn't work. Anyway, so another thing you should know if you're a sanguine, because you're enthusiastic, you have many goals and you have your hands in many things, but you rarely finish them or bring them to completion. So one thing you can do is take all of your personal relationship skills and those influencing skills really and create a team that will finish it for you.
Yeah, and this is I drawing again Clifton strengths, areas of weakness, right? Weaknesses Gallup describes as those things that are obstacles to getting a goal accomplished or meeting whatever metric of success that you're going for. And you have some lesser themes on your full strengths test. So it's got the things that are like on your 30 to 34, the very bottom of your list. Those are your lesser themes. And one of the things it says to do is to manage those weaknesses. You don't necessarily have to eradicate them. That can take a ton of work, a ton of energy, but create support systems around them. So Aaron says, like, yeah, you may be somebody that as a sanguine on the team, you're great at getting people excited and moving forward, but not necessarily one that's going to bring it across the finish line. Well, pair yourself up with somebody that's a closer, that's a finisher, and it could be a really beautiful match. And that's where these temperaments, again, why does God allow all this beautiful diversity? So that we need one another.
Yes.
Right? It draws us into relationship because we're so far, we image God so much better in relationship than we do as individuals.
Now, that's not to say that I can't work on finishing and completing
Sure.
things.
And there's definitely times where you do that.
And I think it's kind of prioritizing that and being like, this is really, really worth it to me to finish and complete this and check this off the box. And I think that's where a lot of our mindset work comes into. And I'm thinking of some of the workshops in our academy, massive action versus passive action, those kind of things. Like massive action, the way that we describe it is you take action until something is complete. But I do like that balance of the two. We do have people who love finishing and checking things off the box. I could care less. And so I like to give them that gift to check that off the box.
Yeah, and it works together. It's giving people permission to live in their area of giftedness.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
Which
it's
is like
an
one
act
of the
charity.
One of the main tenets of well-being, right? They get to enter into that place of flow, which may not necessarily be where you enter your place of flow.
Now, you keep going back and forth with the temperaments and the strengths, and we kind of explained this in the other ones, in the other podcasts, but they both are natural. They're both those natural strengths and weaknesses that we fall into. I like seeing the temperaments as being kind of the broader grouping that you go into, and then the strengths or the talents, whatever the themes, whatever you want to call it, the strengths are kind of these nuances within each person.
Yeah, and the strengths, again, social science data, how do we get people to perform best in high-performing teams? Like they're very production-oriented. Temperaments are, I think, a lot more of a state of being, not necessarily and motivated towards like accomplishing something or how they interact with the team. Strengths are a little bit, like you said, nuanced, but they're definitely the signature themes, the 34 signature themes are, they drew those from the most common themes they saw associated with high performing individuals. So success in kind of a worldly sense. They complement one another.
Oh, 100%.
But there hasn't really been any firm research that I have found as to the overlap. We're kind of just saying, okay, this sounds like this strength and this temperament, and kind of drawing some conclusions and connections between that. But I'd be really curious because we're going to be rolling out that quiz that's going to be capturing people's temperaments, but also their charisms. It'd be so fascinating to have within that same database their strengths to see if there are realistically in actuality like strong associations with certain strengths paired with certain temperaments.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
I remember the first time we talked to Michelle Dunn, who's one of our strengths coaches within the Metanoia
our network here
entity.
Yeah.
And it was the first time we ever talked on the phone. I was like, so I'm a sanguine, and she's like, yes, but a sanguine with high ideation is different from a sanguine with high strategic, or I don't know. So it was like, it was a nuanced version of like having a temperament, and then let's take it deeper. How are you very specific, and how is God calling you to live in your strengths and live in your charisms and your temperaments all together?
Yeah. And we even gave an example. Both of us have a teaching charism. Where your teaching charism through the lens of your sanguine showed up differently than mine through the lens of my choleric.
Yes. Yeah. So interesting.
Cool.
So another thing is sanguines are impatient and impulsive. And so when it comes to personal development, they give up easily. They give up quickly, and they're like,
Yeah.
Toss it out, and they just move on to the next thing that's going to indulge their dopamine.
Yeah. So can we get into a little bit of the, the tips for growing in virtue and some of these things?
In our journal. Yeah. So in exercise 3, we Well, one thing that I talked about before was that they kind of have their hands in all these different goals and projects, but they never really complete them, but they're really excited about them. So to really focus in on exercise 3, which is our contemplating your goals with God, and understanding why, the why behind the goal, and really, I think, connecting that to your emotions. Not in a indulgent way where it's like, oh, we're letting our emotions drive everything that we do and there's no reason or logic, but more of an intentional way. Remember, our will is actually a rational appetite. Our emotions are our sense appetite. So they both incline you to do something, but our will is something where you've already thought about something and then you're choosing to do it. Like, I am willing to do this. So really activating that will of yours, that rational appetite, after you thought something through and really choosing it and saying, no, I've logically thought about this. And that will also help you with consistency.
Yeah. I think just even some practical tools here for the sanguine are like, have a good guide. I mean, there's a natural inclination to be obedient. So perhaps get a coach, perhaps get a good spiritual director, somebody that you can be obedient to,
and
some of that guidance.
It's a social setting too.
Right. And there's something that's social about it as well. The other thing is creating some structure for your life. And so it's like, these are, a routine of life is something that is going to be very helpful for the sanguine that feels like Tigger, like ping, 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 ping all over the place. Because if that's all we're doing, it's just going to be, our life is just going to be one big whiplash. And it's not necessarily going to be ordered. So being intentional about creating a routine of life, perhaps even a routine for your prayer life, a routine for your fitness, routine for social things and that, so that you can be operating within that routine. And then that's going to start to grow some of the virtues of consistency and discipline that may not necessarily come so naturally for you. But
I actually had to do a lot of thought work on these words, routine and schedule, just because they're just like, I have such like a natural aversion to them.
Oh, I can make a schedule like so easy.
I know.
And then it's just like, I don't get it why you can't do it.
Can, and that's like such a natural way. So it's like, why is this routine good and actually lines me up to have fun later in the day, or have excitement, or even if it's like going for a run for me, that's something that I built in my routine, working out, that because I love the endorphins that I experience it. It's like, that is the reward at the end of it.
Yeah. Exercise 4 with the thought recon. Are you ready to go to that?
Yeah, this is a big one. And this is when I talked about the journal before and how everybody I know has like a hard time with the journal is usually sanguine. And it's exercise 4 is where they get stunted right there. Because a lot of people are like, I don't want to know all the negative things in my head. That's one thing. But because you are more inclined to understand your emotional life as a sanguine, I would suggest that you do an emotional recon. So really it's like, what are you feeling right now? And why? What are you thinking? So it's another way in the back door to actually do a thought recon, but you're starting with the emotion, with your sensation in your body, because you're so aware of the sensations in your body as a sanguine.
Aaron, would it be helpful also, because you kind of alluded to this earlier, yes, there's, rather than just getting focused, if you're doing something that's going to be a little bit arduous, right? So it's going to be arduous, uncomfortable. You're pursuing a good that has some discomfort standing between you and achieving it. Is it if you approach that task with keeping the goal in mind of like the good, that the endorphins I'm going to feel after this workout,
the thing that you love, really.
Yeah, and just kind of seeking to kind of be a bit futuristic, engage that.
Yep.
And be like, no, this will be worth it because of this. And even using your memory of like, okay, when I did this yesterday, when uncomfortable, but I felt so much better. And just rather than abusing your memory, being like, oh, it sucked yesterday, like, but
it's tackling and working with that desire emotion that we so naturally feel in our concupiscible appetite.
Yeah.
So like the sanguines are are ordered towards those positive emotions in our concupiscible appetite, mainly love, desire, and joy. So they are like driven by that. So you can actually use those to start a thought recon. You'd be like, I desire this. Boom, boom, and here's why, all these reasons why. And then you could ask one question and say, why don't I have it yet? Or why am I not resting in this goodness yet? Now you have like the real thoughts going on. And you know what? They might be like you might be like beating yourself up. Great thought to take to exercise 5. Right? So you can actually use that to motivate you to just start writing, which is what we want people to do in exercise 4.
In that exercise 5, I think it's great to, because again, so emotionally aware, the sanguines, to be able to kind of really understand what is the emotion that they're feeling, but also as they're kind of entering into a solution a bit, like what's the emotion that they want to feel at the end of this? What's the right fuel for action, especially as they're approaching a task or even an arduous task that's in front of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me see if I have anything to add to that in exercise 5. And then the reason needs to be part. Yes.
Mumbles.
Sorry.
Mumbles.
Okay, I have some of the notes.
We're live, Aaron.
Not really. Yes. So also I think it would be really helpful. Did you say taking them through the emotional processing exercise?
I didn't. No, I think that's awesome.
That's one thing that we've given to you in the academy is how to emotionally process something. And I think that would be almost a fun challenge for a sanguine to try. Because they don't like hold on to grudges, or they're not afraid of a lot of things. They have a sense of fearlessness similar to the cholerics, in that they're willing to try something new, especially if it's novel and variety. And so you can kind of lean into that and just be like, you know what, I'm going to process this emotion just like to see what comes out of it.
Let's see what happens. And finally, exercise 7.
Teach them to connect with scripture through Lectio Divina. Their imagination, because they're creative, and the sanguines, they can really utilize that way of entering into the story, that way of Lectio Divina when you're really entering into the story. Is that meditation or contemplation? According to Aquinas. I mean, not Aquinas.
To Ignatius. It's more the contemplation when they're actually entering into the story.
Yes.
Aquinas, or Ignatius language. Yep.
Yes. So really entering into that picture of the story and asking them, or asking yourself, if you're a sanguine, like, what am I feeling? What am I seeing? What am I sensing? What am I smelling? And utilizing that common sense power that is so overactive in the sanguine. Yeah.
Awesome. So all you fellow sanguines out there, y'all got some work to do. You're way too positive.
Yes.
And you don't
don't lose your positivity.
No,
Do not
I'm
lose
kidding.
that. But use it to actually try out new things. And I think that's the thought I'm going to leave with you guys. What if becoming a saint is a really fun adventure that you just haven't tried yet?
Yeah. So guys, go to, if you are listening to this, you don't know what your temperaments are. By the time this one rolls out, our temperaments combined charisms quiz should be available. CatholicCoaching.com. You'll find it also. We'll have it up there on our Instagram page as well. So check links in the bio for that stuff. So, but that's a great test to get you, your spouse, your loved ones. It just blows my mind that people don't know this stuff about. It's so foundational. It's been so transformative for me. I just don't understand why people learn this stuff. It's just amazing to be able to rest in who you are.
Yeah. And you're going to get, like, we shared some information here today, but you're going to get a full report with your charism, with your temperaments. It's going to be awesome. You're going to like so much self-awareness there in order for you to grow, not to stay stagnant. So
you're going to be able to bring that when next time somebody invites you to volunteer. You're going to be like, doesn't really fit my natural dispositions nor my charisms, okay? So I'm going to say no to being a greeter because I hate talking to people, but I love doing this stuff over here.
Counting money.
I can show up and be a great contributor over here. This is my body part in the body of Christ.
Yes.
And I'm happy to play it. So, folks, thanks again. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Next week, what are we doing?
Melancholic.
Melancholic.
Yes.
My
So all you
secondary.
sad Eeyores, come and listen. No, I'm just kidding.
We have our moments. All right. See you guys.
Bye.